Alright guys, I got a little update here for you. Now, I just ran this. The last video, I showed you that the antifreeze was actually kind of really low. And I did top it off later. And I checked it today. It's been a little while. And I checked it and made sure that it was full. And I just went on the same run that my wife did when it started overheating on her. Now, normally, it runs around this second hash mark here most of the time. And it's always run that way because I don't think it has a thermostat the way it acts. When you start it up, it flows right away. That's the first sign that you don't have a thermostat. So I went out to my daughter's house, came back in, went down the interstate towards Pittsburgh just like she did. And I watched it, and right now it's actually just a little above the third hash mark, which is high for it. Now we are just idling in the garage, but it was actually going up halfway to the 220. And if it did have a thermostat, that would be a normal operating range for it. But I don't think it does. So I'm a little confused because sometimes it would be where it is, sometimes it'd be a little lower. Now, when we've taken us down south on vacations a couple of times, pulling hills and mountains, it would get up to the middle. And then coasting down, it would go back down to that second hash mark. And some jerk put a transmission temperature gauge in the center console for me. So I cannot find one of these center consoles in this tan color that isn't already beat up. So I gotta thank this guy because he's really not smart, because it never moves. And it starts at 140. And the way this runs with the temperature being on the second hash, it never moves. But as it goes higher, when we pull in mountains, the temperature gauge actually will go on the training temperature will move. So it does work. So I don't know. I'm still a little puzzled by this because we have flow. In fact, when I pulled in and parked or stopped on the street before I opened the garage and backed in, the temperature was almost down 220 again. And I was just idling down to the garage here, and it was just sitting here for a few minutes. And now it's actually gone down closer to that third hash mark. And I'm going to go ahead and shut it off for now, though. So there's a couple things it could be. My thoughts was, if it was a thermostat, why would it be, if it was stuck open, then it wouldn't be overheating. It would be always flowing like it is. So I think my next step is I'm going to pull the thermostat housing and get a new gasket and see what's in there. And I'll definitely take you guys on that little adventure for sure. But as I was driving and watching the training temp not move, but the temperature gauge itself move all over, it fluctuate between 220 and almost down to that second hash mark where it normally sits. So I'm beginning to wonder if it's lying. If perhaps, since everything in this car is pretty much 40 years old, the same age as the car, as far as I know, maybe the gauge is lying and it's just not operating properly, or the sender in the engine block perhaps is failing, and it's going too hot when it's not really that hot. So I think after I check the thermostat housing and see if there's a thermostat, I think the next route may be actually checking the temperature while it's in the hottest stage. When after I've run it and it gets up to around 220, pulling over at that instant, popping the hood and checking the temperature, physically checking the temperature, because I have access to a digital thermometer for cars. You know, you point at a rotor, it shoots you the temperature of the rotor, or the exhaust shoots you the temperature of the exhaust. So I'm going to borrow that on one of our next adventures with this car. And when I get it to where the point where it goes up to the 220 or so, then I think I'm going to pull over, pop the hood, and actually take a direct reading off the thermostat housing and then the radiator and the engine block, and see, you know, real time, digitally, not analog like the gauges in here are, what the temperature is actually doing, because that would be a confirmation that the sender unit or the gauge itself was bad. Now, unfortunately, this gauge is hooked in with the oil pressure gauge, so it's not like I can just pop one gauge out. I have to, it's a pack of gauge. It's not like the fuel gauge or the voltage over here, where, you know, they're individual. I can replace one or the other. It's tied in together, almost like that clock. And would you believe that they call this the tic-tac-tock, or tick-tock-tack? That's what it's a tick-tock-tack, where they throw the clock in there, and this stupid clock keeps better time than the digital radio that someone put in this car, which is pretty impressive. So I guess to end this little video, I'll tune you guys in on the progress of this overheating for the 1980 Trans Am. That's my wife's car. We're just going to end on that note that I'm going to pull the thermostat housing, and I will bring you guys along, make a little video of that, and we'll see if there's a thermostat, if it is there, why it's not working the way it's supposed to. So we'll call her quits for this video. Y'all have a good day.